This is a proposal for a program for public television called the 3-Hour Tour. We need to put together a pilot, and to do so we need a little bit of backing. So backing for a pilot for the 3-Hour Tour for public television is what we're seeking in the grants, but let me tell you about what it's about. For those of us who are record collectors, who still have a collection of vinyl, who managed to not get rid of all of their vinyl, who managed to have it move with them through various stages of their lives, sometimes properly displayed and properly used, and other times away in boxes hoping that it doesn't get damp in some basement and that sort of thing. For those of us who have gleaned our record collection down from 5,000 albums to 3,000 albums to 2,200 albums, perhaps. But whatever you have left, they're gems. And you kept them after gleaning through them because each one has a tale to tell. It's not just the music. It's the story. And it's the story that we're going after here in the 3-Hour Tour. The gist of the 3-Hour Tour is visiting various songwriters and musicians around the country, many of whom used to be big stars when they were in their 20s, when they were 20-somethings. But the fickle music industry often leaves such folks behind. Yes, they made an impact, and yes, they filled stadiums. But then that time has come and gone. These folks still see themselves as songwriters and musicians, and they are. And when they get interviewed, whether they're big stars or minor stars or whatever, it's typically, actually it's entirely about their music, their songs, how this song was inspired in the story of that song, etc. But there's a different person there who appears when you ask them to take you into their record collection. A different person appears because suddenly they want to play something special for you. It doesn't matter what it is. They can flip through and flip, wow! You know, and something comes out and the excitement is there. It might just be, you gotta hear this intro. Or there might be some funny or tragic story. There almost always is somewhere on that album they've saved that's inspirational. So it's not just about the song, it's about some connection to the song that we're not going to hear otherwise. We're just not going to hear it. To present music on television seems like such an odd thing when it doesn't have a video to go with it. But to do it as a conversation, as an invitation into the lives and the storytelling of people who music is absolutely every bit of who and what they are. To have that, for them to have that platform, to spin those yarns, is so exciting and doesn't really exist. The last time that we packed up my record albums, because we've moved so many times, we finally have a house we're going to live in, hopefully, God willing, forever. I recorded the conversation I had with my kids about the albums that were coming out, as we stacked them and packed them and all that sort of thing. It was little references about who this person was or what this song is about or where I got this album and why and how come there's just one gem on here, but over the years I could never seem to get rid of this album because it's got this killer number on it that you'll just love. There were quite a number of records, I was proud to say, that my young teenage sons were already aware of who the characters are, who the voices are. So I can't be that bad of a daddy if they've absorbed some of that from me. but a really broad collection of music. We have a very broad collection of music. And so it doesn't always have to be about rock and roll or R&B or Broadway tunes or whatever. It can be a little bit of everybody. You know. I mean, when was Stephen Sondheim ever invited to talk about his record collection? You know, we've heard the same stories about how this song and that song was inspired for this or that Broadway show. We've heard all those things forever. How about if we just let him flip through his record collection and show you some things? So we wish to put together a pilot for this. I have other friends who are excited about it. I have other friends who are willing to be talent as well, back me up. We have a crazy vehicle lined up. I do collect vintage trailers and vintage motorhomes and that sort of thing. So we do have a tech wagon lined up to go to folks' place because, you know, we could come visit somebody who lives in Upper Westchester County, for example, who is happy enough to have us on their front lawn but doesn't necessarily want us in the house. Well, okay, bring out a big old armload of albums and we'll start working with the turntables we have right there in the tech wagon. Anyway, I'm submitting this to you. That's what it's about. By the way, there are eyes here behind the reflections. I've never made a film here on the computer before. This is very funny, and normally I would have my children helping me out. And yes, this is a bowling alley in the background. My studio is in a 100-year-old bowling alley that nobody knew was here out in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. But that's the gist of what we're doing. It's called the 3-Hour Tour. And of course, we would meet and interview people for sometimes much longer than that and then edit it down, or perhaps we'll visit with several people during that 3 hours. And then show it on public television in the evenings, maybe 10 to 1 a.m. once a week, that kind of thing. If you look at public television and the state of public television, we unfortunately have started to rely on big, giant productions that they can use for fundraisers that have a certain same sort of feel to them. This would be something very different. This would be something that people of a certain age, I suppose that's me, can relate to in a really exciting way. You know, when your favorite songwriter pulls out an album that has nothing to do with his songs, or her songs, I'm sorry, and you're watching this on television, you're like, oh boy, I have that album, or I had that album, or I remember that, and I want to hear where they're going with this. And they'll be so excited to share that, and folks will be so excited to hear that. So that's where we are. Anyway, we're seeking the backing to create a pilot to then pitch that to public television called the 3-Hour Tour. Thanks. Now I have to figure out how to shut this off. Here we go.